To discuss the fight against insurgency, especially in the northeast, I'm being joined live from Abuja by a security analyst and retired military officer, Major General Cecil Esekaigbe. Thanks a lot for joining us on the news at 10. Now, what we can hear now appears to be... Thank you. Appears to be some form of confirmation, at least from the Borno State governor, that 3 local government areas in his state are currently under the control of insurgents. Are you surprised by the conflicting reports of control?
Well, first of all, let me commend the governor for not living in self-denial. You see, the truth is that insurgency and terrorism, they are protracted crises. And, you know, it's laughable when you hear people give a deadline and ultimatum for ending this phenomenon. Yes, I'm not really surprised, but I think the security forces are doing their best, but they still need to do a lot. And, you see, we must have to key into, you know, what the Global Terrorism Index talk about. And I'm happy that the new security strategy that has just been released will give, you know, a template to how we can better coordinate, you know, these counter-terrorism operations.
Well, the rhetoric coming from the government, at least in the last 6 months or year or so, has been that the insurgents have been, you know, substantially degraded, and what we can see are pockets of isolated hits. They even talked about lone attackers. But with this kind of request coming from the Borno State governor to the army, how do you read the progress in this counter-insurgency effort?
There's appreciable progress. That is what I said. You know, you see, in counter-insurgency, the counter-insurgency is more costly than the insurgency or the terrorism itself. So we need to put our hearts together. And there is no other time than now when there is need for interagency cooperation. Because there seems to be a disconnect. Because when you hear the lot of bombings in Sambisa and all that, and you see here a governor crying foul that there is insecurity in his place, it calls for, you know, interagency cooperation to tackle this. Not that they are not doing their best. It's a protracted crisis. There is fluidity in their operation. And the counter effect is more costly and not as fluid as the act itself. So we need to put our hearts together to see how we can end this menace once and for all. But it's not, you know, an operation that you say tomorrow we'll finish it or you give a deadline for it. It's a protracted crisis. And this is the time to look at a counter-terrorist strategy that takes into effect what they call preventing, you know, those conditions that are conducive to the terrorist himself. And that is why you hear in the United States and some other countries, they call it the concept of soft power. You see, we don't rely on the military approach alone. And that is what the national security strategy has come to enunciate, that yes, you must have to look at the total of the human security and has been accentuated by, you know, technological development. So there must be a combination of the soft and the hard power, which is the military target, to be able to tackle this urgency. It is not a military operation alone. At the strategic level, soft power, the battle of heart and mind, becomes very, very, you know, important.
Well, you know, the bombardment of Boko Haram hideouts by the Air Force continues from what we understand. Are you impressed with the funding? Some people say perhaps it's a funding challenge and, you know, the military is quite stretched. Are you impressed with the amount of funding that you think is going into prosecuting this fight?
Yes, the government is doing its best in the face of competing needs of other sectors. But like I've always said in this program, the funding is not adequate. For instance, you know, budgetary provision for defense calculations is not enough. And that is why you see some countries. Let me give you an instance. In the Lake Chad region, Niger has about 4% of their GDP dedicated to military funding. You know, Chad has about 3.6% of their GDP for funding. Nigeria is a paltry 1.8%. So we must not rely on budgetary, you know, allocations to tackle defense calculations. So we must have to think outside the box, looking for special provisions for the military to be able to tackle this menace.
All right, security analyst and retired military officer, Major General Cecil Esekaigbe, thanks for joining us on the News at 10 tonight.